that kind of style of music, because all Chuck Berry was doing was taking this lick that he heard his piano player do on the piano, and put it to guitar. That was originally a keyboard, a piano riff. And you know, years later, of course, Chuck Berry was a different guy. If you've ever seen any documentaries on him, he didn't want to give anyone else the credit for it. But that's the reason that most of Chuck Berry's songs are in B flat, because it was written by a man on the piano. No guitar player is going to purposely write a song in B flat because it's so hard to play out of.
I've never seen nobody do on stage what he done though on that tune that you were doing.
Oh, there's no doubt. He was.
He's the only one I ever seen do that. You know?
But he got that from a guy named T-Bone Walker, Texas guitar player. And T-Bone was was also a big influence on B.B. King. That's what B.B. King said. He knew for sure he wanted to play an electric guitar when he heard T-Bone Walker do Stormy Monday. I mean, he knew he wanted to do that. And T-Bone would play it behind his back, between his legs, you know, throw the guitar up in the air and everything else. And Chuck Berry took that and kind of made it his own. Because I guess at the time, you know, when Chuck Berry and that stuff, television was out, and I remember seeing, which we have internet and everything, now you just type in the name on YouTube and it pulls it up, but I'm sure it was a sight for a lot of young kids to see this guy on TV making that kind of music, just stuff they'd never heard before. You know, the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones says Chuck Berry's the reason the Rolling Stones did what they did. And again, Chuck Berry's influences go back to Charlie Patton and T-Bone Walker and Robert Johnson, those guys.
And you know, Jim and Jesse actually got a really hot tune out that came off of Chuck Berry's music production. I can't tell you the name of it, but I've heard it several times.
Well, Chuck Berry, extremely influential, and again, you know, influential on rock and roll, and that's why this music and this exhibit that we have is so important, because, you know, you hear people say, well, you know, the Rolling Stones and the Beatles say, well, man, we heard Chuck Berry and it was, you know, that was it for us. And then eventually they did what I did. I heard Jimi Hendrix do Red House and go, man, I love that music. And then I found out that there was a guy before him, and then a guy before him, and a guy before him. And that's what this exhibit's about, and the stuff that's going on. It's about those original guys that did that music, that Delta blues, that from that came rock and roll and country and soul music and R&B, and there wouldn't be anything on the radio now if it wasn't for the blues and this Delta blues stuff. Any other questions, anybody? If not, we will go to the reels.
What was the technique you used on the other guitar with instead of the pick?
The slide guitar. A lot of those guys at the time all played different ways. It was an open tune, because there wasn't, you know, in the 30s in rural Mississippi, or the 20s and 30s in rural Mississippi, wasn't a whole lot of guitar teachers around, or music teachers, period. Yeah. And those guys would tune a guitar to an open chord. Most guitar players play in a tuning where you have to press strings a certain way to get a chord. Those guys would tune it by ear without touching anything to make it sound, you know, would make it open tuning and have a chord without having to touch anything. And then you just put the slide on the neck and move it up and down, and it changes. You know, if you're in open E, then, you know, one step up from there, and now you're playing an F and an F sharp and G and on up the neck. And that was it's called bottleneck slide guitar, and that was. A lot of those guys played that and played in those tunings, and there's still people to this day. There may be, Robert Johnson had a technique where he would play with that slide and would have, you know, the bass line and the melody going simultaneously with his right hand. He'd have a bass line, and then he'd be, I can't do it, he'd be playing the melody with his fingers, playing with slide on this finger and chord them back behind it at the same time with another finger. And to this day, I've never heard, I haven't heard of anyone that can emulate exactly his sound. Eric Clapton has put out album after album. You know, everybody recognizes Clapton as being one of the greatest guitar players of all time. And he's done it on record after record, made his living, you know, off of Robert Johnson songs. And he still can't play. He's been trying to play like him for 50 years and still can't do it. Bonnie Raitt is probably one of the closest I've heard that could play like Robert concert, and she can play like rock, and she studied under a lot of those old blues musicians too. There still isn't anybody to this day that can play like that man could at 25, 26, 27 years old in 1930. It just, I've never heard anyone that can do it, and people that have tried for years and years and years, which is, I guess, is good. You know, probably a lot of the music we have is because of guys trying to play like him and go, well, shoot, I can't play that, so they come up with another way to do it. They actually started out playing it on their lap like this, and would get a knife and move the knife blade up and down the strings, and they figured out, well, I can get a pill bottle and put it on my hand, and it was easier for them to play it that way. Anything else?
I got one other thing.
All right, Mr. Jim.
When I was 100 years ago, when Mom would give us a dime, when we'd go up at the theater, and you'd get him a nickel one time. But we'd be walking back home, and we'd come down by what we call a quarters. Don't mean to be wrong here, I'm just telling you the fact. And then people would be out there in the yard, they'd be out there on the railroad track, and they'd be doing everything. But they'd be singing this blues like you talk about, without any music or anything. Sure. They'd just be singing. And I don't know if there's too many people in here that heard that, but you would have to say it does a hard time blues.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be saying it very emotional.
And that's where it
They've
came
been
from.
pulling a cross-cut saw all the damn week. And I mean, there was sort of a blues to get a break, you know, with that cross-cut saw, that axe swimming in trees and stuff, you know.
No doubt. And that's where this music
I've heard it many times.
You know, those guys didn't, they, work in the field for 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, or 6 days a week. You get Sunday off and Saturday night. If you wasn't just, absolutely collapsed from working all week long, they'd have to do something to kind of give themselves some entertainment. And that was all the entertainment they had.
It was.
Well, everybody, I appreciate y'all coming out. Again, if you didn't get a chance to see the exhibit, please take a look at it before you get out, because they did a fantastic job with it, and not just with blues. And it's about all roots music, bluegrass, and everything else. And again, I really appreciate y'all being so attentive and listening to me try to do this stuff. And I appreciate that, because I apologize also about my voice. I'm a blues guitar player, not a blues singer, so I apologize about that afterwards. But thank y'all. We got some food right up here.
Hey, you gonna play a little while we cut this stuff up?
I need some entertainment while we cut these ribs up.
I got a request.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I got a request.
Hey. That's right.